Thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome to our session today, Resiliency and Implementing Wastewater Infrastructure Projects Amidst Lebanon's Overlapping Crises. Thank you again for joining us. I would encourage you to say hello in the Pathable chat and share where you're joining us from. I'd also encourage you to ask questions in the Pathable chat throughout the session. My name is Michelle Grimaldi and I'm a Senior Program Manager at Chemonics International, where we implement the Lebanon Community Support Program, or CSP, funded by the United States Agency for International Development. CSP is a 7-year, $80 million activity which began in 2018 and aims to mitigate sources of tension, strengthen the delivery of essential services, and improve economic opportunities in underserved communities throughout Lebanon. I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker today, Mr. Osama Amad, the leader of our project's wastewater infrastructure component. Since 2019, Osama has led implementation of sustainable municipal wastewater infrastructure interventions and industrial pretreatment technologies. He has more than 30 years of design, construction, and operations and maintenance experience in the water and wastewater sector. Osama holds a master's degree in engineering management from the George Washington University and a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Kuwait University. And with that, take it away, Osama.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Thanks for the kind introduction. I would like to start the presentation, and thank you very much for everybody who's tuning in. I know some of the attendees are in the US and others in the, wait quite early in the morning, and others in this country. I'd like to acknowledge the team that make my work possible. They're a team of Lebanese professionals who are very able and capable and self-motivated, that were able to push the program forward after 2 years of, despite the dire situation in the country. And I owe them a lot of credit for pushing the program forward so far. I'd like to thank Ahmad Al-Fazin, acknowledge Ahmad Al-Fazin, the infrastructure manager, Yusuf Abu Hamad, the investment advisor, Carol Swady and Mahmoud Farran, the construction supervisors, and Adham Hankar, the procurement specialist. The next slide goes over a brief description of our program. It was awarded back in July 2019, about 2 years ago. Initially, it was $15 million, increased shortly after startup to $22.25 million over a 4.5-year period to implement 6 wastewater treatment plants or infrastructure projects, with one of them, at least one of them, on the Litani River, which is the largest river in Lebanon, and to mitigate 12,000 cubic meters per day of wastewater east. Additionally, there is another component in the program, which is to promote industrial wastewater treatment through our investment incentive fund that allows for us to provide rebate for industries that install pretreatment technologies and equipment to reduce industrial pollution. Our main presentation is primarily on the municipal infrastructure. So the next few slides will go over the progress of our work from startup to today, and contrast it with the country context, the continually deteriorating economic and situation in Lebanon and its impact on our program. So upon launching the program, Chemonics developed a staffing plan, a work plan, assembled the team, and right away, we started meeting with our counterparts and stakeholders. Our main counterpart are the regional water establishments in Lebanon, in the north, in the Bekaa Valley, and in the south. So we've held numerous meetings with them, along with the Ministry of Energy and Water, and developed a complex matrix of 60 possible projects and start evaluating and ranking them. In the country's context, initially, they were in July, they were, we're going to look at the exchange rate of the Lebanese pound against the dollar as an indicator of deteriorating economic situation. So it has been pegged to the dollar since 1997, 1,500 Lebanese pound per dollar. However, in October, with the introduction of a really measly tax on WhatsApp usage, there was outburst of protest, spontaneous protest. Everybody went down the streets to protect, basically protesting the dire economic situation, the underlying unemployment and deteriorating economic situation in the country, forcing the government to resign, and continue to add pressure, and with banks limiting capital controls on people's ability to withdraw dollars and hard currency. So we moved into 2020. The next slide. We selected about 14 projects from the initial 60 projects and developed different scenarios of projects that would fit within our program and within our budget and time frame, and ended up with 6 projects that we launched the feasibility study for them. However, in the country's context, COVID, the first case of COVID was detected in Lebanon in February, and along with it, they were implemented by the government closures and restrictions to movements and shutdowns that affected the economy further towards by June, with the exchange rate of 7,000 Lebanese pound per dollar. A lot of the infrastructure projects that were enacted by the government were halted or canceled, some of which were wastewater infrastructure that are vital to the selection of our 6 projects because they were complementing each other. So that prompted us to have another look at our selection and see how best, it's an opportunity and a challenge that we felt we need to take advantage of to improve the likelihood of the successful implementation of our projects. So in the next half of 2020, on the next slide, not only we looked at other projects, but one of the initial 6 projects we had to abandon it because the unavailability of the land. So that created even more opportunity for us to look at other projects. On the country's context, here comes August 4 with the Beirut Blast, which is considered to be one of the strongest non-nuclear explosions in history, causing 200 deaths and 7,000 injured and more than 300,000 homeless, and caused the short-lived government to resign. And incidentally, that was last August, and we're now in August 21. Till now, there is a vacuum of government. The caretaker government is not able to function and deal with international financial institutions properly, and a permanent government has not been formed as of yet, further causing further deterioration in the economy and the livelihood of many people here. So, along with that, to counter the COVID crisis, there was a stricter closures and shutdowns that affected our physical visits to the sites, to the surveyors, to go and survey the lands that we're going to be developing, and to do geotechnical analysis on the soils. However, the closures were slightly eased at the end of the year to allow for year-end, to reprieve the people and allow for year-end celebration. But as we see in the next slide, that came back, caused a major spike in the country, in the COVID, that resulted in complete shutdown and closures with 24/7 curfews for several weeks in January and February, forcing our teams and ourselves to work virtually and try to push the program forward without the benefit of going to the sites. However, by then we did revise the selection and end up with 6 new projects. Some of them are old, and we'll go over that detail shortly. And on the countryside, another major problem that we continue to suffer from is the lifting of or reducing of the subsidy to essential commodities like the fuel, medicine, and some food items that are causing shortages, particularly the fuel that caused hours-long queues on the gas stations and affected the power supply to the country. So where are we at now? The next slide will show that we've completed the design of 3 projects. We're in the bidding process to 1 or 2 shortly, and finalizing the design of the remaining 3. And we hope to start construction in the next couple of months. However, in the country, the fuel shortage continues to worsen. It's affecting some of our abilities to work, either from home, or even sometimes we're concerned that getting to the office is challenging due to the shortages of fuel, and there's a possibility that even power at the office buildings could be cut if the landlords or management companies are not able to secure fuel for their generators. So the next slide just shows the scale of the economic crisis in Lebanon that we managed to push our program forward through it, despite this enormous hardship to people driving big sectors of the population below poverty line. And it is considered by the World Bank to be possibly one of the most severe 3 crises since the mid-15th century, starting with 1,500 to a Lebanese pound to the dollar in September 19, end up being now close to 20,000. So what are the projects we're planning on constructing? There's 6 projects. The first one is wastewater treatment plant rehabilitation and expansion. It's in the northern Bekaa Valley. It serves the city of Baalbek and the surrounding areas. The plant currently is a 15,000 cubic meter per day. We're with the expansion of the collection system by the Ministry of Water, we have decided to add an expansion component to make it 22,500, and it serves about 160,000 people. The next project is Aitanit. It's in the south section of the Bekaa Valley, or we call it Western Bekaa. It's at the outfall or spillway of the largest dam, the Karawan Dam in Lebanon on the Litani River. And the effluent from the plant directly affects the quality of the Litani River that's heavily used for irrigation. So we're rehabilitating the plant and adding a sludge management and stabilization to utilize the sludge for land application and agriculture. The third project is in Miria pumping station. It's built about 5-6 years ago, but never operated because the access road to it was never completed. We're completing the access road.
15 minutes.
Thank you. We're constructing the access road with a culvert to cross the stream. It serves about 60,000 people, and it's rated at 7,000 cubic meters per day. The projects 4 and 5, they're complementing to each other. We initially chose number 5, which is the Burj Al pumping station, to pump wastewater from the lower Litani region to the treatment plant in Tyre. with the understanding that the ministry will construct the lower Litani pump sewer. However, since that project was halted, we decided to take it on to ensure that pumping station would be operational once it's completed. And it's rated at 7,000 cubic meters per day and serves about 60,000 people. The last one is again, Charlie wastewater treatment plant, one of the ministry's projects that was halted, where it's a small town, 1,100 meters above sea level, with the ministry installing about 80% of its collection system. And we're completing the remaining 20% and the small 500 cubic meter per day wastewater treatment plant. So what are the challenges that we face in implementing our program? They're basically related to the economic crisis, where the water establishment currently is not able to maintain stable water service. There's a wide, Lebanon being one of the few Middle Eastern countries where it has abundance of water above its needs. Currently, there is a shortage of potable water reaching the buildings and the homes due to the power outage. Also, there's the drastic devaluation of Lebanese pounds, creating hardships to public sector employees, particularly who are paid in the local currency, causing a lot of them to seek other employment or immigrate, and low morale. Also, there's structural issues with the tariffs that's enacted on wastewater. They're grossly inadequate, and with the and of course paid in local currency, so they're measly. That's not able to support the sustainability of this infrastructure. And the collection rate, with the poverty levels increasing, plummeted quite a bit. So the economic situation as well is causing some theft from public infrastructure, like even manhole covers are sometimes missing in the street, and electric wires are stolen or taken away to be sold for profit. So what is our response to these challenges? So sustainability is centered to all of our efforts as requested or as per our scope from USAID. So we have many components to implement to ensure the sustainability, building the capacity for the operation and maintenance, trying to help with organizational structure of the regional water establishment by creating wastewater management units. We develop cost recovery plan for our infrastructure that details the amount of operation and maintenance costs and staffing needs, and figure out ways to finance these needs. We're going to look into also possibly secure some commodities for some period in the future once we complete the infrastructure, from like chemicals and fuel, to reduce the financial burden on the operator. We're going to develop as well, possibly, and manage a performance-based contract with private operators to ensure the facilities are operational, and train the counterparts in managing these contracts. Now, all of this is only possible if and only if the economic downturn could be stopped and hopefully reversed. So without this component, it's going to be a really tall order to make sure that the infrastructure is sustainable. With that, I leave you with the next slide, a picture of Amad wastewater treatment plant, the oxidation ditch, and the background is the Mount Lebanon. You see there's, it's not shown in the picture, at 2,400 meters. And the team's motto, which is, we are number one and we're number two business. And with that, I can entertain any questions if there's any.
Thank you so much, Osama. Sorry,
Sure.
I was unmuting. So we have a question in the chat. We can start there. I'd also encourage anyone to include other questions in the chat, or you're welcome to unmute if you'd like to, show us your video and say hello. But I'll start with this question from Alice. Thank you very much for this overview. My question is, what measures are taken to ensure integrity and anti-corruption is built into the program to increase trust and sustainability of this initiative?
I think the way the program is implemented is in tasking the implementers, which is us, directly by USAID, which is a funding agency, to implement this infrastructure, designing it and physically construct it. So we're controlling the physical implementation side. And of course, by law, these infrastructure are the ownership of the regional water establishment. And they are tasked, of course, with operating and maintaining and sustaining it. So we're doing all we can to build their capacity. But as far as the process of implementation, we have complete control over and implementing it from A to Z, whether with the design, construction, inspection, testing, commissioning, and with that we ensure the integrity of at least this process. What we don't have control of is ensuring that the facility will continue to be sustainable. Those are the challenges that we talked about and our plans to try to mitigate them to the extent possible. I hope I answered this question satisfactorily.
Thank you so much, Osama. I believe we have a hand raised. I'd welcome whoever is raising their hand to unmute and share their question. Okay. Osama, can you hear me?
I can, but
Okay.
I didn't hear the question.
Excellent. We got another question in the chat, so we can go there. Great job, regardless of these big challenges. How have the political challenges impacted your job?
Definitely. I mean, the crises, political and economic, they're kind of intertwined, where I'm sure the lack of permanent government is affecting the economic situation, causing further deterioration for the local economy, the exchange rate, the devaluation. And that is affecting the implementation process as a whole. We have major concerns that, for instance, when we go into construction, the importation of specialty equipment, concrete, steel, cement, might create a challenge for us. And some delays. So, the political vacuum, so to speak, and the exacerbating the financial and economic situation in the country. And almost, knowing that it has to be resolved for the economy to turn around. So we're hoping and praying that this will happen soon.
Thank you so much. We have about 1 minute left, so I can end us with one question. And thank you so much, Osama, for this presentation today.
Thank you, Michelle.
Of course. Could you talk about the laboratory capacity to test the wastewater? Is this with the water authorities or is it outsourced?
It is outsourced in typically colleges and universities. However, we did rely on historic data that we had from prior projects and prior research and evaluation and studies that were done on the effluent. Due to lack of chemicals, buffers, chemicals needed to perform the analysis in those laboratory, the educational and university laboratories, and even some private ones. But we feel we have enough data to base our design on, and part of our rehab, for instance, for Itenit is to equip it with a functioning, complete wastewater lab inside, within the premises of the treatment plant that was capable of monitoring the effluent. Additionally, part of our rehabilitation, both for both treatment plants, is to have inside, in situ, sensors that provide the data without having to do wet chemistry and collect the samples, and it's much more effective and on time and available right away for the operator to adjust the process.
Thank you so much, Osama. I believe we're at time and we'll be getting cut off. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank Osama for the presentation, and I hope everyone has a great rest of World Water Week.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.